Pastor Stephenson, Worme, good morning. I invite you to come and sit with me. You good? How good? If all you heard what he tell me. If all you heard what he just tell me, you wouldn't believe. I kind of love this kind of thing, you know. You just sit down and talk with somebody, and they could ask you anything. Pastor Worme, Pastor Stephenson Worme. What's your middle name?
Milton.
Milton? Oh, Milton. That old name, boy. Anyway, I know why you were asking me this morning. What is it you want to ask me this morning?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Some of which might make you blush. That was a joke.
All right, well, I would answer whatever question you ask me.
Okay. Sort of wondered whether I was the most appropriate individual to interview him this morning, but somehow the lots were cast and they fell on me.
Yes.
Well, sometimes you stay around people for years and you don't really know them. That's quite possible. And very often we find that happening. You know, you pastor people for many years too, and even your congregation don't know a whole lot about you per se. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not too sure how open we are, that sort of thing. How many of you know your pastor's age? Well, some are saying 40-something. Well, what I can tell you, though, is that I am pleased to announce that I'm older than him. I affectionately call him Stano, so if you hear me doing the interview, refer to him as Stano, that's fine. All right, Stano, we go back a long way, don't we?
Yeah, a long way.
Quite some years. Good memories, too.
Yeah, a lot of it. Some of it is challenging but interesting.
We need to back up a little bit here because there are so many people listening in and they don't know who you are. They know who you are, you know, via voice and face because you're one of those public persons, but probably don't know much about your upbringing. And let's go back a little bit and tell us a little bit about your upbringing in regards first and foremost to the environment to which you were born. Single parent, married, what was the situation?
Well, pretty much I'm married to a single, what was he married? I was born into a family. My father originally from St. Mark's, Duquesne. My mother from Calavini. And I remember asking my mother how they met, and she said to me, well, you know, pilots from the country come down looking for work. And there she met him, and they fell in love. My grandmother didn't too like him, she said. But they used to meet under a mango tree. And after a meeting under the mango tree, you know what happened? So, the reality of life, my mom got pregnant with me, and she was tough for her because, you know, at that age, and my grandmother saying to him, he had to leave the house because, you know, a child and whatever else, but she kept her.
Let me quickly interject. You like mangoes or not?
I like mangoes bad. Yes, I love mangoes. Okay. I love mangoes. So pretty much that was it in Calavini. And the environment, I mean, pretty much my mother and my father then make room to take my mother in because of the situation. And then it got a little house that they were staying in. And then we moved to Marion, where in Cocoa. That as you go up the steep hill in Cocoa, they were staying right away. Christopher Ghetto is now right in that exact spot that we live. So I knew from early life, growing up with the Wind family and all of that, we grew up there. I grew up knowing Mr. Bro on the top of the hill, star apple. We used to eat a lot of that. They had a star apple tree there. And I always remember as a young child growing up, Mr. Bro used to cook some good pea soup. So I used to remember when you're down the hill, you smell the pea soup. You know, you're cooking pea soup. So you go up and play a plane around the outside kitchen they used to have then. So you go up there and you play a plane around the kitchen because you want to have some pea soup. So I used to get his pea soup.
What about siblings? Well, I know your sister pretty well. We sort of had interaction for some time, and
yeah.
Then your brother and I, of course, who went to school together. Any
Yes.
other siblings you had?
Terry, I have Terry, who is my brother. We have four of us within, but my father, 5 children here in Grenada. Desmond, who is he in Mary and Monjaloo. My brother, which is Terry, he lives in the U.S. now, and I have 2 sisters, Patsy and Jillian.
Well, I'm not sure about Jillian, but I do know Patsy.
Right.
Did you interact quite a lot with them, or you
No.
live separately?
You mean as I grew up, or
In your young...
in the young? Well, yes. Aunt Terry was very close. We've always been very, very close. In many ways, we talked to each other a lot. Our father was never home, although my mother and father were together, but my father worked on ship. So he pretty much from Trinidad to Grenada, so you're always out. So I and Terry grew very, very close. I was the eldest, so pretty much I take a lot of responsibility of the family as I grew up. I remember early years, I can't remember surprisingly, the pre-primary school I went to. Because I remember I remember my hair was very long, which my mom back. Very long, and I remember when I was ready to go to school, I was 6 or 7 years old then, and my mother said I had to cut my hair, and I remember crying because, you know, I had to cut this long hair, and I loved it. So I remember that, and then going to Worme school. I remember the first school that I went to, and it was very interesting going to Worme school for many reasons. By then, living in Cocoa, it was good, it was nice. And then something interesting happened. My mother and father decided that they'll move to Grandans Valley. I never asked them why they moved to Grandans Valley, but they moved to Grandans Valley. And the middle of everybody know where Weeks lived there in Grandans Valley, the barber, down in the middle there. His house is exactly there, our house were. So we moved from Worme School, and then I moved to Grandans RC School. That's where we were. Went to school there. And growing up, we had a lot of sheep and goat and fowls and everything there. But I was very involved in the school, but I give a lot of trouble. As much as I were. I give a lot of trouble. I didn't just want to go to class. I like to fight. And it was quite interesting because I was talking to Reno, who were here, Richard Smith. I was speaking to him because I remember going to Grenada School, and when we had a fight with him or I interfere with him or do something, he used to go up on Coffeeville Hill and wait for us in the evening. And his big stone he used to pelt. So we used to pass on the beach. You know, when we fight in the day, we pass on the beach. They're afraid to go through. And when you go where they had the market, no, the vendors market, they were all coconut. And we used to have that. So we used to pass on the beach and pick up and to go home. So that was part of it. And I think because I used to give so much trouble in Grenada School, my mother then moved us to Cali School. It's real trouble. So I moved there. That was interesting too, because down there we used to play police and prisoner. Police and prisoner. That was good because you have one who is the prisoner, guys who are the prisoner, and I like to be the police, the group with the police, because I run in behind and beat them guys who's the prisoner. Long whip, and he had barbed wire and so forth down in that area. I remember, lunchtime we playing that. I remember again, I'd still have a cut across my leg here, deep cut, because you're running behind, you forget it. And I run through a barbed wire and he sliced my foot deep. A lot of blood. So that was good for us but we enjoyed it because it was fun. Kids play a lot then. Marbles was then. I just said that about marbles. Coming down to the stretch, the long stretch you had there, Uncle Gary he had some reflectors, but what we call them, shinies, they used to call them, for the car to see that there's the edge of the road and middle of the road. We as children used to take stone, and we used to bust all those reflectors for marble, because they were nice and they were expensive too. By then, it's kind of, if a cent was for one, them was like 5 cents. So you had big money to, if you sell it, you buy sugar cake and then, So we used to do that.
I hope you asked a lot to wash away that scene. Yes, but your father wasn't around a lot from the context that he's traveling. He used to travel from Grenada to Trinidad quite often. How much did that impact your life, let's say negatively?
To a great extent, because I did not grow up with a father figure. My father was never around. I do not know what it is. My father may come and spend a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 2 months, and he's gone. So I never know what it is to have a father on a long-term basis in the home. So pretty much it was me, as the eldest in the family, getting the blame for everything. Anything go wrong in the family, I get blamed for it. When my mother not there, I take responsibility for the family. So very early in life, I had to take responsibility for my sibling. I remember starting to wash when I was 10 years of age. My mother first used to put us, remember, your little socks and your underwear and thing you wash. By the time at 12, I was washing in tub and juking board and scrubbing brush.
But was there a father figure subsequently in your life outside of your father? Anybody, male person, that impacted your life?
The person that impacted my life growing up, coming out of, is when I moved back. For all those years young is when I moved back to Calavini to live, from Granada Valley to Calavini. We moved back to Worme schooled. And I think I was about 11, 12 years old then. Mr. Simon, Teddy Simon. He has always been, for me, a father figure at school. From those early years, he was the only person I really looked up to and really looked at his life, because there was nothing. And remember, in those days, a lot of the men around drink a lot of rum and run women. I mean, really, a man have one child here, one child everywhere. And the rum shop was the thing of the day. Mr. Breezy and all of these guys. So you never really had and see those sharp father figures. Mr. Ross in Calavini, he was one of, that's Aaron and them father. He was a person that we went by a lot, but Mr. Simon stood out the most, I believe, for me as a father figure.
All right, you've made a lot of strides over the years, obviously. Let's go to the spiritual part now. You're now a pastor, but obviously you would have had different encounters over the years in terms of spiritual encounters. You may have been exposed to the scriptures. How early were you exposed to the scriptures, and what impact did it have on your life?
I think very early, my mother, the Catholic Church, used to go to Catholic Church saying granddads and do that. So that was early. But one of the things, my mother used to work with Mr. Thomas, who were a Jehovah's Witness. So eventually we started to go to Jehovah's Witness Church very early, the one in St. George's. So my early years of being involved was being involved in Jehovah's Witness Church. And there I spent my early years there.
Could you remember anything about it that stood out? Or
what I remember
was not so nice or so nice?
I think what I remembered most is that they teach you about what they believe and not so much what the Bible believes. That was my early experience of it. I felt there was more of what these people believe and not so much what the Bible. The Bible was a means to an end, it looked like, for me. So by the time I pretty much reached the age of 14, 15 years of age, I really didn't want to go back there, because I felt it was only about going out and telling people about what they believe. So I didn't feel connected at all to it. So my spiritual life, those are the early years. My mother, in other words, by then she had not yet surrendered her life to Christ, but she used to go to church. So to 12, 13 years, I remember the first time really starting church is when, and I shared it here already, Charlotte Davis came visiting up the church, this muddy road, stone road, and this white lady coming up with a colored skirt, and she had on a yellow top and a black shoe. I could remember vivid in my head, what is white woman coming up doing in my yard? And I was in a window, and she came and invited me to Sunday school. That's at Emmanuel Baptist Church. I think that for me is where it really started to dig in about learning the Bible and understanding the Word of God at that early age.
Well, the Davises, of course, were here in one of the early missionaries that started and influenced the work here in Grenada and helped to develop a number of the Baptist churches on the island.
Right.
She obviously were inviting you folk to what? Bible?
To Sunday school. To Sunday school. I was invited to Sunday school. That's the reason why she was there.
Were they daily vacation Bible school?
Right, there were vacation Bible school, but daily Sunday school, every Sunday was important. I think for me, Sunday school really helped me to be grounded. It taught me the scripture, but it also taught me the Bible in a real way. And being able to express, even at that time, I stuttered badly, but I was able to share a little bit and listen. I was more a listener than a talker then because I stuttered badly, even at that young age. So I talked very little. But I wanted to learn, so you want to go to Sunday school. I think that's where I really get understanding the Bible from Sunday school.
And in fact, in the earlier days of the Baptist movement in Grenada, Sunday school, Bible studies, and of course prison ministries, those were three of the highlights and the strong features of the Baptist fellowship here in Grenada. Did you get involved? I'm jumping ahead a little bit now. I'm going to go back. But did you get involved like in the prison ministry also later on?
Right, I did. In terms of, and that's the second thing. Once you get involved and every month you go up to the prison and you pretty much, at this young, you see people in prison. I could remember saying to myself, there is no way I'm going in there. There is no way. And although in the early age I was bad behaved, but as gradually by 12, 13 years, I began to change that. And when I go to the prison, I really did not want to go to prison. So I did everything to stay away from prison, good, stay out of trouble, stay out of the way. It was something in the prison. That early years of visiting the prison really helped me to clear in my mind that I do not want to be there.
All right. Now we're going to come back. So I jumped ahead a little bit, so let's just back up. You would have left, obviously, primary school. You didn't get into secondary school.
No, I didn't get into secondary school.
Then you decided, like back then, you know, people were always encouraged to have what we call a trade.
Yes.
And you got into, interestingly, carpentry.
Yes, because my father is a carpenter. Interesting. And I used to help my father carve things. He used to do carving and sell for the tourists. That's when he's here. Tourist season here. He used to go to the beach and sell. He's carving men with little boats, a little coconut tree. So I look at your father is doing it. So you take a little block, 2 pieces of wood, and you're chiseling, you're chipping, trying to, learn. And that's where I learned basically about doing wood. Matter of fact, the St. George's University, the sword they have with the snake around it, my father that did that. Both of us were the one, I helped him in that carving that. It took about 6 months to get it done. Get the wood, cut it, and get the right wood, and be able to the snake to scroll around the sword. It was quite interesting. It's done in pieces and then put together. So that early years of learning carpentry was very important to me because I think for my father, I liked the wood thing. So when I went, Mr. Keynes Douglas, the old man, he and my mother asked him if I could come and, get a little work with him. And I remember working for $17.50 a day. Could never forget that.
That wasn't bad.
Well, it wasn't bad, but that was a lot of money. For me, now starting to work $17.50 a day, I was king.
Pretty good.
I mean, pretty good. But then my mother didn't have much. So as you work, you give your mother the money at the end of the fortnight when you get paid, and she give you a little $40 back in your hand or to pay boss and buy what you want to buy. In those days, you didn't work for your money and keep it. You work for your money and give your mother. These days, kids, they won't give them all mother all. I come home, I give your mother all your money. How many of you give your mother all your money when you come home? But that's what we did. We did all the money. Your mother give you back what you think you needed. But those was it. But learning, and the first place I work, I remember, is on Locust Street, the top house. You have a wooden house there. We went to learn. So that's where I learned trade. And every week, Mr. Douglas told me, Mr. Man, you need to buy tools. So every fortnight you get paid, you need to buy something. So I started buying a hammer, then I buy a chisel, then you buy a measuring tape, then you buy a square, then you buy a saw, until you accumulate the basic tool that you have to work. So that's how I started.
All right, let's go back in terms of your spiritual life now. Then, as the Baptist movement, of course, gathered momentum in Grenada, Bible studies became something very deep.
Yes.
And there was great emphasis on Bible studies. And then you had several of you young men expressing desires to further your studies. Of course, it was in Barbados at the time.
Yes.
And you had folk like yourself and
Aaron George and Brian Roberts.
Brian, and you also had
Osbert James, and Royston Isaac went before us.
Who are the principal figures that challenge you young men to get involved in preparation for ministry?
I would think because Jamaica Baptist Unit was heavily, Emmanuel is influenced by Jamaica Baptist. St. George is influenced by the U.S., all right? So Jamaica Baptist were heavily on studies, but also Southern Baptist was also heavy on studies and development. So at a young age, I talked to you about going and study, going and better yourself. But also, if you love God and you want to do ministry, the possibility is open for you. But then I really didn't interested in ministry. I stuttered badly. I can't talk. So I wondered, why interested in being any pastor? I had no interest in that. What I want to do then, because I used to work, my father also used to do some work with the yachts, in yacht services. He wasn't nice as now. But there we used to go there. I used to go with him. I used to go and clean down boats and so forth and get that done. And in doing that, I got a job with 2 persons to take care of the 2 kids and to go up the islands. And that was interesting. And they said, come on board and work with us. You pay $100 a day. We're jumping from, I leave the work they're doing the carpentry work. And then I get to work for $100 a day. I gone. So pretty much that happened. So I hopped on the boat, taking care of the kids, and just following through about ministry. So my life pretty much then, I was in church, involved, but I think that trip was a turning point in my life when it comes to ministry, because on my way up to St. Lucia, the Pope John Paul was visiting St. Lucia, I can't remember the year, and therefore I then, was 86, somewhere in 85, 86, I believe, and Deborah and Frank we was going up the Grenadines to spend some time there. And in it, they was asking me, have you ever thought about going back to study? And I said, study? No. I mean, I'm on a yacht, a nice yacht, study? Back. Yeah, maybe, but I said, you're a bright young man, you should study. I on a boat, and that to me was good, life good. I eating, I drinking, I swimming, food free, and again $100. Why want more than that? Life nice. But I wasn't thinking about that. But leaving the Grenadines, which was beautiful, Tobago Keys was really, really nice, and up St. Vincent, outside on the west side of St. Vincent was up. For whatever reason, Frank and Debbie, both of them, went down to the galley, and they left me. They said, lodge them up, keep, look at the steering, look at the, and keep the boat here. All right, this mark is where you want to keep the boat. I know not much about boat, but I learned a bit, so they said, keep the boat here. They went down. The dolphins, 3,000 dolphins was a lot, the dolphin, in and out of the water. And I was sitting there, and I heard my name called. Everybody home called me Harold, but the name was Stanford. So I went down in the galley to ask Frank, Debbie, what do you call me? What? They said, no, we didn't call you. I went back out. I sit down. About 3 minutes after, I have my name again, Stanford. I go down again. I ask, did you all call me? I said, what happened to you? Are you hearing things Frank said? I said, well, I heard somebody call my name. So I went back. And going back up the stairs, I remember Samuel and God calling him. So when I sat down again, no, my mind said different. I'm waiting for the name to be called. Again, if it called, thinking. And just about a minute after, my name called again, Stanford, and I said, yes, Lord. It was clear, like they remember vividly. And I remember, you know, like how somebody talking to you, just how you're here with me, saying to me, I want you to go to Bible college. Bible college? I mean, forget it. I mean, I'm not interested in that. I want you to go to Bible college. All preparation is made for you to go. Just like that. Done. Nothing else, done. Just like we were talking to you here. I said, okay. So we went up. It was just so different. Went up, saw the Pope. It was very nice service. Looked at it, got everything, came back down to Grenada. I called Sital, who was at the Emmanuel Church at the time, and I said to him, Pastor Sital, I need to talk to you. So I went and talked to him about, you know, my interest in going and studying in college. So he called Carter Davis and said to him, you know, I want to have this meeting with me because I want to go to ministry. And then Carter Davis said to me, said there, and then he came and we talked about it, why I want to go. And I told him, well, not sure. I think God called me into ministry because I had a passion for God, but not ministry. And then he said to me, he said, well, it so happened that somebody this week have sent $100,000 US to pay for anybody who wants to go to study. Airfare would be paid, medical bill would be paid. If you want the glasses, you would pay it. All books would be paid. A stipend would be given. And coming off the ship, Debbie and Frank put me sit down and they said to me, I didn't say anything to them about it. They said to me, well, if ever you think about going to study, we would give you 100 US in your account every month. Now, you can't get better than that. That's how I was called into ministry. I initially didn't want to go into ministry. I was called into ministry because God tells me that's what He wants me to do. So I'm not here because I desire some people who want to be a pastor. I wanted to sail on the sea and enjoy life. So that's how my come about ministry.
Right. And of course, you spent a couple of years Barbados.
2 years there studying. It was Aaron, George, myself, Brian came the last year that we were. They were very interesting. It was from around the Caribbean. There was 17 different countries represented. Was meeting people from different islands and sharing. It was very, very good. You learn different cultures and so forth. It was very different. But I wasn't a bright boy. Remember, I finished secondary school, so I had them bright fellas there. So when them going online, partners, I had to stay and study because exams are every 2 weeks. So I had to study, and I had to study hard, real hard too. I was not a good speller either, so I mean, all those things were the combination of things I have to. But amazingly, I did exceptionally well. Came out with my degree, and it was very, very good. I myself was surprised how well I did.
You came back to Grenada.
Yes.
And you got back to...
got back to Emmanuel Church.
Sital was still there, Pastor?
Sital was still there, getting ready to leave. Then Alexander came. Henry came, and Alexander. So by the time I came back, the last missionary was there, was Alexander. Old gentleman was there. And there they were preparing to leave. Jamaica Baptist no longer being able to support the work here. So they were preparing to leave, and then they said to me at the right time. So then I was called to be the pastor of the Emmanuel Church.
You were how old at the time?
I was, 90, I was 20 years of age.
Yeah, that's pretty young to start pastoring.
Yes, it was. And that's why one of the members in the church said to me, Miss Verna said, I could never be she pastor. I'm too young, and forget it, I wouldn't be your pastor.
Yeah, there's an irony about that, because later on, she turned out to be one of your biggest supporters.
Biggest supporter. Matter of fact, because there and then I learned, basically I decided that if anything I don't know, I would ask her. So I went. She was my counselor. She was the person I went to ask. And when I don't know something or somebody do something in the church I don't know what to do, I go and ask Sister Verna for advice. And within 6 months, she was my biggest supporter. Matter of fact, she called me her son, and she was bad for me.
Yes.
She was bad for me. Nobody couldn't say nothing about me. And at the same point, she said, I cannot be she's not voting for me. She, in no way, at 20 years, she cannot be the pastor of the church. But 6 months in, she was one of the strongest supporters because she really loved me.
One of your biggest challenge then, early part of your ministry, you had to do some physical work on the church, and your carpentry still kicked in, right?
Well, yes. And that was pretty interesting because while I was in church, where Emmanuel Church was a garage, Banfield garage, and in my head, the roof was bad, but nobody was fixing it. So while I was in college, my last year, I was thinking what in the church I could change. And I said, the first thing I do is change the roof of the church and make the roof nice. It was an old roof. With inside you go up and you're looking terrible. I said, I'm going to change the church roof. That's the first thing I did. So as I came back, within the first 3 months that I'm passing the church, I took down the church roof. We went downstairs. I took off the whole church roof. And I changed the roof and put on the shingles on the roof, which is still today. And then I cut the church and make it like a church, because then I put a window in the back with a cross. And then I put the two sides, I put the stained glass windows on both sides. So pretty much that happened within the first 6 months of being at the church.
Yeah, and then you played a little rude, fell in love.
Yes.
Got married.
Yes, I did. The problem with that is I was pastor of the church, I was single. And them women in the church, and especially older women, tell me, I need to get married. I need to find a pastor. No, I had to find a wife. And in truth and in fact, I mean, looking at the church, Sandra was there. She was one of the persons who was in the church, Sandra Joseph. And I liked her a little bit before. She was singing in the choir. She had nice skin, nice eyes. She looked good. So I liked her. So I did. And I remember when I came back, within the first, after about a year and a half, I then we started talking and chatting. And then I went to ask her father. And those days, you had to go home and talk to the daddy. Or the mommy first, whoever is. You can't go and just dine working, you know. So I did that, and he said yes, and then I got married. But she was living in Canada then. When we got together, she went to migrated to Canada, and I were in Grenada. Interestingly, getting married to her, it was not what God wanted for me, but what I want, and pressure put on me. And that
the lady that finally became your good
wife,
wife,
yes.
Did she tell you anything
Yes.
about it, what she told you?
Don't do it.
Okay.
I remember one lady, another lady, Sister Florita Binder. I would never forget. She pulled her coal pot. I went by her, and she was behind the house. And those days, Moses coal pot, now I'm stove, and she coal pot, and she sit on she coal pot. And she said to me, she said, I'm warning you, don't get married. No, everybody tell you to get married, don't get married. And two, don't do it. It's not the best interest for any person you're going to get married to. If God called you into personality, do not suit you being in ministry. But I didn't listen. I didn't love to. I hear him, but I ain't hearing you. You know that kind of thing. You know when you love what happen. You know, people talking to you, but you don't bother with them. All you see is the woman and man you love. Forget it. What they're talking making sense to you at all. And that's what I did. So I went ahead and I got married.
All right, and it didn't last, did it?
No, it didn't. 3 years. 3 years. I had to make the decision between staying in ministry or losing my marriage. So I had to decide which one I would do. And that was very difficult and very painful. I remember I was bathing in my bathroom, and God, boy, you had to listen to God, huh? A green Irish soap, I could never forget. I'll never forget that. A green Irish soap I was showering, and right there showering, God said to me, well, I warn you not to do it. I tell you. But in the same place, and when that happened, and when I had to make the decision and give the letter to the church, and I told her, look, I'm going to separate ways. I remember God saying to me that, now you want me to remain in Grenada, the same place my life failed, he would rebuild it, but under his condition, not mine. Now, at that point, when that happened, it was difficult. Those days, a pastor getting separated from your wife and the divorce, you're mad. It just will not work. I mean, believers, they had all kind of things to say about all kind of things that they have said. But I've always been the person where I listen, despite things, I listen to God. At the end, I listen to him. And I remember I was getting offered to go to the U.S. Friends of mine, I remember, ticket was bought for me to go to England. And they said, look, we'll send you back to school, we'll pay for you. My mother and father was in the U.S. then. So the time they come to the U.S., and my uncles and aunts were there. They want me to leave Grenada and come. And God said to me, I don't want you to go anywhere. The same place your life failed, I will rebuild it. I couldn't see that then because among the things was saying was bad. Remember leaving home, leave my wife at the house where I built in California because I built my house pretty much. By the way, just go back a bit. When I came from college, Baptist College, I had enough money. I was 20 years of age. In 2 years, I had enough money in my account to build my house. So I built a concrete a two-bedroom house. Then, and my brother, again, build that, how God provides. So I left her in that house. I remember staying to a house that I worked to build in St. Paul's. And I eat mango and sauce. I had nothing, partner. It was rough. Days I have nothing to eat. I was rough, real rough. You're afraid, you want to go out your house because people have all kind of things to say about you. And I remember working with a gentleman in Lansapine, Peter Geiger. And he said to me a day, he said, Stanford, why don't you find something to do? I said, do what? He said, maybe you like the sea. Why don't you get a boat and go fishing or do something, dive lamby and lobster. Do something. I said, I don't know. I thought about it, and then I went back to him. I said, well, that's a good idea, God. He said, you're serious? I said, yes. He said, all right, find a boat. And I find a boat. And then he gave me, the boat was $60,000. He wrote a check for $60,000 and paid for it. I was shocked. And then he gave me the boat, and then I had some friends in Caracou, so I went to Caracou for a year, diving lamby and lobster for a year, out on the sea. It was relaxing, refreshing. I stayed at the Mermaid Inn, right on the beach. So I stayed in Caracou for a year, but I never went out in the road much. I came from the sea, go Petit Martin, pick up my fuel, come back, pack up there. Morning, I pack up, go get bread, get what to get, fuel, and I'm out to sea for a whole year, just there. And Nesta and Johnny was there living with them, and Mr. Bullen that gave me that place that I lived there. So there I were for a year. And then after a year, one day I was out in the sea diving. Them guys was down diving. I alone was in the boat. I didn't dive that day. I alone was in the boat. And God just said to me, right there, Stanford, time to go back to Grenada. Time, after a year. So when the guys came up, and on the way back, I said to them, I'm going back to Grenada. Are you crazy? We're making money. Life is good. Things are good. Where you go back to Grenada for what? I said, I had to go back to Grenada. So I just packed up everything just about 3 weeks after that, and I went back to Grenada. I came back to Grenada. And my life then took another turn.
But it must have been pretty challenging. You separated. Was there any bad blood between yourself and...
Well, no, at the end, she went to Canada, pretty much decided to go our separate way. It was difficult in terms of separating, but she went back to Canada. We didn't have any children then, and pretty much she went. I went my way, and I left it alone. And we never did. We got divorced, I think, about 3 or 4 years thereafter. We pretty much lived our life separately. You know.
Yeah. Then your stint at Emmanuel Baptist came to an end.
Yes. It came to an end because of the divorce, the separation between my wife and I.
And then you started to worship at which church?
Pretty much, remember, I went to Carriacou right after that and came back. I worshiped for a while at Market Hill Pentecostal Church. I was there for a while, but I wasn't very comfortable there. And then, so after a while, I moved back I moved to St. George's Baptist. PJ was here, and I used to come in and sit right in the corner. They went church over, I leave. Because people don't want to talk to you, a divorced man. You know, they want to talk to you. They don't want to deal with you. But I and PJ got close. And after a while, members of the church here reached out to me, so I began to want to stay and be here. So those was very challenging years with building my life when I came back. And I remember having, my life is very interesting. I remember having a $20 a day coming. That's the only money I have, all the money I have. I came back. And the offering plate coming, and God told me to give the $20, but I get $20. That was hard. That's all the money I have. As a matter of fact, I didn't have somebody give me the money. I didn't have more money for weeks. But I did give it. And when I left on the way up, leave church and going up the road, a man gave me a ride, and he just gave me $100. Yep, that's it. So these things of my life, about God in my life, has always been a very interesting journey. I would think coming out of all that scenario for about, I didn't stay, I'd say, single for about 12 years. And my life, then I started my construction company. The same person, Geiger, encouraged me when I came back. Why don't you start? You like to do things and build. I started one called construction. So that in itself take a different turn in terms of the development of my life. So I spent a lot of time doing what I love to do, which is carpentry, and being at St. George's Baptist Church.
Yeah, and it did take off, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, but I was here. Wilkie came in and was here from Wilkie Williams as a pastor after PJ left from Dominica, and on a 3-year contract. After the 3 years, the church didn't renew the contract. I knew Wilkie in Barbados because on my last year in Barbados Baptist College, he came in, so we became friends. So when he come from a country church, it's that tongue church, 2 different mindsets. He didn't know how to deal with people telling the pastor, speaking up to the pastor and sound to the pastor. He couldn't deal with that. So I had to help him, and sometimes I used to sit on church council. Get involved and was on the church council. And I used to sit close to him and kick his foot sometimes because he used to go off. In terms, he can't deal with people telling him things. And so I used to, try to help him. And I did. But after 3 years, the church realized that he cannot deal with it. He cannot deal with a tongue church. So we didn't renew the contract.
But to be fair with him, he loved evangelism.
Oh, jeez, he was an evangelist. He wasn't a pastor. He was an evangelist. I think that was the problem. Wilkie is an evangelist, not a pastor. And sometimes we had to know where our calling is. So he stayed here for 3 years, and after the contract, he remained here. And he subsequently passed away, So it was good working with him. But my life then, and then the church, then interim committee, I was heading that. And out of the interim committee, I became, after a while, too long. And I know God on your life, you just know. He's just saying to you that you need to now become the pastor of the church. I didn't want to. I did not want to go back into pastoring.
Okay. Well, you don't always have your way, do you?
No.
All right.
No, you don't.
Then you met me one day, Stanford.
Yes.
And told me that you met this woman.
Yes.
That you really loved her. Now, when you introduced me to her the first time, the immediate thing that went to my mind is that this young woman is too pretty for you.
Yes, I remember I said.
I did not think that you were qualified, Stanford. You're not a bad-looking fella, but I just felt that she was just too pretty for you.
I remember you saying that. I remember.
I could say that too.
Of course, I remember you saying that.
We're friends.
You say, Stano, nah, partners. Do want too pretty for you.
Oh, that was just joke. Really.
Yeah, well, it was. But interestingly, I remember and how I met her really. I was president of the Credit Union League. I went to a meeting, and it was the Credit Union annual meeting. And Floyd Telesford was the president then. And he said to me, was the manager then, and I was the president, the accountant is here to give the report. I said, she had to wait. Who is that? Me? I can't be bothered with that. So I continued to do my work. Then he joked me again in the paper. She have to go. She had a meeting. I said, Floyd, she's like, we're paying her, so what's the problem? I have a meeting. When I get to the point on my agenda, she would come up. So finally, I reached a point on my agenda and invited her to speak. And in those days, Credit Union was rough. Ralph, Mr. Baptiste and them from Grenville, rough. And they were giving trouble. But Mr. Baptiste asked a tricky question. That time, she came and sat down to speak. I haven't looked at her yet. Huh? And look, I was concentrated on my agenda and what I had to do and taking notes. I didn't look at her, I just called her. No, we have the accountant. She came and so I've looked up at her. But Mr. Baptiste asked a tricky question, a good question, and she answered. When she answered, I looked up. Yeah, partners. I looked up, and I said, wow. Okay. I listened. She talked very well. It was good. And I give her my number.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
While at the church here, you got involved in missions. In fact, how many times we went to Africa? Was it twice?
Twice. We went yes.
Twice. What triggered off the first experience or the first trip to go to Africa?
Interestingly, Prescott, I was standing in the back of the
Jeremiah Prescott.
Yeah, Jeremiah Prescott at Market Hill, Pentecost, sitting there. And Prescott talking about this Africa trip that he want to go and he want people to go with him. I said, Africa? Are you crazy? The only thing you know of Africa, they tell you, what you see on TV. These kids with a big belly and malnutrition, all kind of thing, and fly. Are you mad? I'm not going there. But he was speaking about it and talking about Africa. And I sitting in the back of the church. And God again come to me and said to me, I want you to go to Africa with Prescott, clear like day. And I said, are you crazy? I sit down like down with God. Are you crazy? Africa. But finally I give in, as I normally do to God. I did. And I took my first trip to Africa. And I remember that. Richard, you didn't go on the first trip that we did. Richard, Pastor Baker, and so forth. What was most amazing about this trip? First, I was shocked at what you see on TV and what's the reality of Africa. I mean, the houses are bigger than our houses. They're nicer than our houses. The buildings are. People are not as suffering what they put on TV. Yeah, there is. But, I mean, the countries develop and high-rise building. And you know, but that they don't show you that. So I was surprised at that. And we were living in a place where there was a nice inn to condition. And then we had to go to Missouri slum. They accommodated to pick us up. And about 5 to 6 miles out, you were smelling this stench. And that's what is that? They say, where are we going? Where are we going? I mean, it was crazy. So that's a slum where 800,000 people living, 8 times the population in Grenada. And getting there, man, it was a city in itself. But it was terrible, the condition. When I went and see the kids, and that you really go down and you see the kids, I couldn't take it. I started to cry. I mean, it was rough. See the children was bad. Really, really bad to see that. That really got to me. By the time we got back, I remember Pastor Baker saying, boy, we just fuss about things we're eating home. That's the reality of life there. So that changed. changed my life in a real way. But what was very amazing about that trip, Bishop Kitunga, who was there, I don't know him, Prescott know him. There was about 8 or 10 of us on that trip. His church he was building his church. His church was 15,000. He had over 2,000 churches across Africa, well-known bishop. Of all of us on that trip, the bishop came a day and he asked to see me. He's a young man. He said, I wanted a young man, I want to see him. So I went outside, come in this nice bus. He said, young man, I want you to come and live at my house. What is this? I mean, I don't know him, Prescott, but you want to see me? You want me to live at his house? So he took me, and Prescott said, what with you? I said, I don't know. He took me, I went to his house, Bishop Kitunga lived at his house, and it was an amazing experience of the connection with that guy, but it's God at work. The first time I preached between a church that was holding 15,000 people in his church. Remember the first day I went to his house, and then we went to church the Sunday morning, and he said to me, you preaching this morning? I said, I preaching. I preaching. I mean, I preaching. And I'm thinking about the size of the church, and the amount of people out there. You may have 100 people you speak to, but 15,000 people? That's a completely different ball game. But I can remember preaching a sermon on tithing, giving. As of last year when I spoke to Bishop, remember he's still saying to me, there are people still giving and tithing out of that sermon, and still remember that sermon that changed their life. I remember that Sunday, people give their shoe, they give their belt, they give their watch, they give people give people just give. They gave. It was amazing Sunday of experience of that. But that was a life-changing experience for me.
Yeah. A little later on, you also went into Rwanda.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
after the genocide.
Yeah. That was a tough sort of experience for the people in Rwanda. Of course, we hear about it quite a lot, about the genocides, the Hutsis.
Hutus.
That's correct. And among the people that died.
Yes, a million persons.
1995.
1995, yes.
That was quite a lot.
Mr. Kagame, who now still is the president.
There's an interesting thing, though, about that trip, because the people are so disciplined. It's not like us in the Caribbean here. There's a disciplined touch about the people. I think it's every first Saturday in the month.
Yes.
Everybody has to do their cleanup.
Yes, everybody had to do the cleanup. But it was disciplined. The streets were clean and people were very involved. It was amazing, but not also the relationship between the people and each other. Despite you had this huge genocide, there was that rebuilding of the church, rebuilding of relationships. And we were part of meeting with university students and talking to them about seeing their neighbor, who were their neighbor, killing their sister and their brother. And they had to run for their life. They were people living in the same community but killing each other. I mean, that was very painful to hear them. But it was part of the healing process, sitting and helping them to purge, helping them to release themselves.
All right. You intend to go back to Africa?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I intend to live in Africa. I love it.
Right. Well, let's just move out of Africa a bit and come back here, and let's see if we can wrap this up. Now, you're kind of controversial fella, You know that?
Yes.
All right. You thrive in controversy?
No.
You don't.
I know. People just make me... I don't make myself controversial. I just say what... I'm a very plain speaker. I say what's on my mind with wisdom, but I tell you how I feel. And persons would have problems with that.
Okay, so it was a little bit uncharacteristic when, of course, getting involved in politics, and you got involved in politics.
Yes.
Maybe to a certain level.
Yes.
Not only you, but another religious leader,
Carl,
also
in Carl
politics. Now, how challenging was or is that to be a religious leader and also be involved with some depth in politics?
Well, it is very challenging. I remember Peter David, my good friend, I could say that no.
Watch, no campaigning here. Go ahead.
No, he came to me first to run in the south, northeast?
Southeast.
Southeast. And I said to him, I said, boy, there are many things I want to do, but God wouldn't allow me to do that. That's not what he wanted me to do at this point in my life. So I suggested, let's have a talk with Carl Hood. So I went and talked to Carl Hood. I went and had a discussion with Carl. And then to be able to talk about what we do. So out of that came that. But my involvement, and I very much, remember, my mother was very political. So I grew up in a political environment. She was at Gary, close. So the reality of it is I grew up in a political environment. So I pretty much know a little bit about politics. So I have a love for politics. I have a love for politics. So getting involved in politics wasn't difficult for me. I mean, the Honorable Prime Minister too had issues with me just the same. I mean, we had real issues. So even in the midst of that, when I get involved in politics, it was difficult because a lot of people, Christians, and people who are not Christians saying, this pastor was involved in politics for what he involved. I felt, look, the only way you could change things is get involved in it. I could stay inside and shout as much as I want, but I'm a strong believer of that. If you want to change things, get involved. So my involvement in politics is because I believe strongly and still clearly believe that I could help change the process, change things and make our country better. So out of that, I got involved in it. It was difficult and challenging because politics for people is a game for many people. They do things to only please people, not do what is right. People don't necessarily sometimes doing what is right, doing what is popular. And therefore, that become difficult. My controversy, I remember and going back, just slipping right through that with the NDC winning and doing all of that and getting in and people getting power. And they asked me what I want. I want nothing. I don't want then no position. As you remember, I didn't take any, I didn't want no position. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in helping the country get better. But even after that, when they expelled me from the party, remember that? I want to go to that. They would expel me from the party, from NDC. They thought I was, because I was chairman of the party. Remember, I was chairman of the NDC, right? Because then, I remember the day I was in the U.S. When I was in the U.S., they called a meeting, not expecting me to be back in. I catch a plane and fly back in, right? And I came in to chair a meeting because you can't have a meeting with the chairman. So I remember we all meet and we talked about this meeting that they're going to have. And the intention is they're not sure what they're going to want to think is look like they want to expel us. And I remember Peter, all of us talking, and I said, well, we need to go. We had to go because we all are members, we have position. I said, nobody going away. Maybe nobody going nowhere. I said, nobody, I alone going up there. I alone going up there. Because the reality of it, what the intention I felt of them to do is humiliate everybody. But I could deal with the humiliation. So I left home, and Peter gave me his speech. I said, what are you giving a speech for? Yeah, in case, call me, in case things go good so I could come. That's fine. But I went up there, and I remember walking in, and the first person I meet was Nazim. I said, how are you? Fine. And I said, I want the agenda for the meeting. And he said, I don't have the agenda is inside. I went inside and asked for the agenda. Nobody knew where the agenda was for the meeting. Everybody there for a meeting about to start 10 o'clock. And nobody know where the agenda is. So I stand up there. I waiting for the agenda. 10:30, I waiting, asking for the agenda. About 11 o'clock, somebody started to come and give out the agenda. And I took the agenda, I looked at it. And I remember 3 down. We had a devotion, we had welcome devotion and something there. Whatever that word, I didn't understand the word. But I felt like that's where they're going to make the move. Whatever the words, that's where they're going to make the move. So I went in and I started to chair the meeting. NDCites do what I had to do, Strong as ever, that's what it is. Called Pastor Paul, he did the devotion. And then after he did the devotion, I went back to continue the meeting. And Roberts said, Ponytail, we call him. He said, I have something that... But before then, just before that, I remember asking them, what does that mean, that third thing on the agenda? I went to Nazim. He told me he don't know. Ask Parks. So I went down and asked Parks, what is that? Parks don't know. So nobody know what that mean on the agenda. So the reality, I know what that was. So when the time reached, your ponytail then put up your hand, you have something you want to say. Mr. Chairman said, fine. I knew what it was. I could have said then and no, you cannot. Because I chaired the meeting. I'm in charge of the meeting. And then all I said, yes, fine, go ahead. So he moved to expel me from, not me and 9 others there. And then he made the move, called their names. I said, thank you very much. I said, I need a seconder. So somebody seconded. And then I looked at all of them and I said, okay, all in favor of expelling me and 9 others, please raise your hand. So they raised their hand, and then I thanked them for the opportunity to serve and to be there, and I left.
Yeah, well, so that was democracy defined.
Exactly. I presided over my, but my point is that I did it in the proper way, and it's not controversial. That's what you want. My point is that you need to be honest and sincere about what you do, no matter what people do. If you're honest and sincere, you'll always survive.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you though, Ed, is there any future in this in regards to further movement in the party?
What is it you really want to ask? Ask the question.
I just did.
What was the question you asked?
Any desire for further movement?
In what?
Politically.
In politics? Yeah. Of course there is.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hear about that in a subsequent broadcast. But all in all, you have been in quite a number of things, community activities, church work. You've done a lot of traveling. You're also into credit unionism.
Yeah.
So that's quite a lot for one person. It's quite a lot of hats to wear.
Yes.
Being just one person. Has it been tough?
It has been tough, challenging, and difficult. And as you know, my wife now lives in Tampa. So it has been challenging and difficult for me, having wearing so many hats. Because I run my construction company, I pastor a church, be involved in the credit union. I'm now chairman of GDB Bank. So all of those things. And the thing about what I do, I love when you give me things that are broken to fix, things that are difficult to fix. I mean, when the Prime Minister asked me to chair, to be the GDB Bank, I was happy too, because I felt I could make a difference. The credit union, when I went in there, it was difficult and challenging. Only 32 members, I remember that we have. But in itself, the credit union grew under my leadership. So there were a continuous amount of things I do, and what I get involved in, I pour my heart into it. I really do.
Now, finally, I noticed that you've begun some expansion here. What are you really doing? You're seeking to hold how much more?
Well, another 200 persons. So we'll be about 450 persons be able to accommodate in our church.
How has the work been going so far?
Good, progressing, as you would see, progressing smoothly. We just need some money. So if you have some money,
right, so that's your request.
Yes.
Yeah, when I finish at Pomrose, I'd like to be assistant pastor.
I would be happy to. It'd be nice to work with you.
Be careful, because it might overthrow you too. So.
But
anyway, it's been obviously it's been an energetic life for you. It's been challenging like anything else, and you now have a congregation. In a few words, how will you describe this congregation? They're listening, so be careful.
No, I want to be very honest about it. It's a beautiful place to be a pastor. It's a beautiful people, full of love, full of care. A group of people who, when I'm not around them, I miss them. Because I believe there's a genuineness about each of us wanting to help each other and wanting to see each other succeed. It's not about the individual, but collectively the whole. This church is about helping people and developing people. We have our challenges, but really, I love this congregation. I do.
My partner, best wishes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and enjoy your pastorate here and any other thing that you put your hand to do.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.